And when I was on holiday a few months ago, I read yet another story that Bear Grylls had collated about World War II. And I just thought it was an absolutely amazing story. And it's about a guy called Louis Zamperini, who was an airman. He was a United States airman in World War II. And all the books I read, there's always common themes that come up time and time and time again. And these are, I hope you can read it. I didn't realise the text was so it's going to be so small. But the two themes I come across all the time is God can see you through the most awful of experiences, and also forgive your enemy at the end of the day. And these two things always come out in the stories I read. And I wanted to focus on those two F's today, the faith and the forgiveness side, and illustrate it via Zamperini's, what I think is an absolutely amazing story. I hope you agree. Might be just being biased about it, but I thought I had to share it with you, so I had a word with Mike. And so here it is. Next one. Okay, this is the guy in question. Just a quick overview of him. He's called Louis Zamperini, and this is his CV. He's still alive, incidentally. He was an Olympic athlete, definitely a war hero. Bear Grylls describes him as the ultimate survivor. He's a devoted Christian, and in my eyes, he's also an example to us all. And I want everybody to take something away about this story at the end. So, next please. Just a little bit about his background. As you can tell from his name, he's got from Italian extraction. Lived in New York. He typically lived in a very rough neighbourhood. He was always in trouble with the police. Got into drugs, alcohol, and he actually admits that he used to jump on the back of freight trains, hitch a ride at the track, and come back down the line again. And occasionally there was a tramp sitting on the back of the train, and he said one day he got really fed up with this tramp giving him a bit of chops in it, and so he threw him off the train when it was going about 70 miles an hour. And he said, well, he probably killed him. He didn't know the outcome, but it's something that's always he's lived with. Next, please. Right, when he grew up, when he was about 18 or 19, he suddenly discovered in school that despite the fact he drank a lot and was on drugs, that he had an amazing talent for running. And his coach in school managed to persuade him to give up drinking drugs to pursue his dream of becoming a great athlete. And he actually represented the United States at what was quite infamous Olympic Games in 1936. It was hosted by the Nazis in Berlin, just 3 years before the start of World War II. And he ran for the States, and he nearly won a medal. He was in the 1500 metres, which is like about 4 laps around the track. And he was nowhere come with 1 lap left. And he had this massive sprint finish towards the end and nearly got a medal. But at the end, Hitler was sitting up in his gallery above the track, and he was so impressed with his running, he said to him, I've got to meet that guy, that American guy. He's amazing. Where did he get that finish from? So he was summoned up into the stands, and he met Hitler and all the Goebbels and the whole Nazi shebang, and he had to go and shake their hands. Next, please. Zamperini was a very, very colourful character, though. He wanted a souvenir of the Olympic Games. So when the Games were finished, he went into the Reichstag, which is Hitler's palace in Berlin, jumped over the fence, and he basically chinned up the flagpole at the front of the Reichstag and nicked the Nazi swastika. As he was coming down, though, he click, 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 click. It was all the rifles and all the Nazi stormtroopers were surrounding him. And he came down and he said, look, I'm not being disrespectful. I just had such a great games here. I just wanted to take home a souvenir of my time in Berlin. And he told in front of one of the big Nazi generals, and he said, fair enough, I appreciate you want to be associated with Germany and your swastika. You take this home to America and preach how good Germany is and what great games you have. Disappointing picture, I'm afraid, but this is Zamperini about 20 years ago on a US talk show. It was something like Oprah or something, and unfortunately it's all black. But it's actually the Nazi flag he actually stole from the Reichstag, and he's kept it to today. And he's in a sheltered housing complex now in the States, and he still keeps it in his room. He's got Hitler's sort of main swastika. Right, next please. Okay, Zamperini in the war, 3 years after he was in the Olympic Games, Second World War started up. He was a bomber in the United States Air Force, and his job was dropping bombs on mainland Japan. He was very, very good at his job apparently, but unfortunately disaster struck. Next please. Right. About 2 years into the war, Zamperini's on a bombing mission over Japan. Unfortunately, he gets shot down just a couple of miles off the coast of Japan. 6 crew on board, 3 died instantly when the plane hit the water. 3 survived, and Zamperini, he was such a character, he took control of the situation. He was in the life raft on the Pacific. 2 guys in there were panicking, and he pulled them aboard and said, calm down, we're going to get safe, we're going to get through it. Right, at this point, I'm going to take my presentation, my little talk, off on a complete tangent. And I learned this, one of my favourite comedians is Billy Connolly. I don't know if you've actually seen Billy in doing his shows, but he'll tell a funny story. Then about halfway through the funny story, he'll talk about something completely irrelevant. He'll go off a complete tangent, and then when he's sort of bemused his audience, he'll come back again to the funny story and finish it off. So with that in mind, I thought, I'll learn a bit from Billy, and I'll do exactly the same. So with that in mind, next please. Right, it's a pub quiz question. Who is this 1980s pop artist? And before anybody answers, the pub ting quiz banned from doing, not because you've got an advantage, because I know you'll come up with a numpty answer. It is Tina Turner. It is. No, Tina Turner is black. It's Elvis in drag. It's a trick question, Pete. Trust me. Yeah. No, it's not. So, can we have the females, the sensible people in the room? It is Kate Bush. Kate Bush, she had a big hit in 1985 when I was being brought up, so I'm a big 80s pop picker. 1985, she had number 3 hit in the UK, big hit in America with a song that you might hear even today, Running Up That Hill. They play it on, the BBC play it when they do the coverage of the London Marathon. It's like, for cheesy, obvious reasons, Running Up That Hill. Hear the lyrics, next please. Again, apologies for text, it's quite small, but some of you might recognise it, and it's I'm not going to sing it. Jason said he'd give it a go though, so. And hear the lyrics, and it says, and only if I could, I'd make a deal with God and ask him to swap our places. Now this is a bit you probably know from when you hear it on the telly. Keep running up that road, keep running up that hill. So that's how the song goes. Now the bit that interests me is the second line. I'd make a deal with God. Now, what Zamperini did, and this is exactly from his autobiography, he was lying in his life raft on the Pacific Ocean thinking, what the hell am I doing? 20 seconds ago, I was having a laugh, a joke and a fag with my colleagues on the aircraft, heading back to the States to land. 20 seconds later, I'm in the Pacific Ocean with 2 of my colleagues, and 3 of my colleagues are dead. What the hell am I going to do? And he wasn't a Christian. That's important to stress. So he said, right, I don't know what to do. He goes, I'm going to make my own deal with God. And that's exactly how he describes it. I made a deal with God. Similar to Kate Bush did 4 years later in a song. Okay, next please. Okay, this is an extract out of Zamperini's book, where he basically said his deal composed of 2 things. God, if you save me and guide me through what is going to be a very, very difficult situation, I promise, firstly, to serve you for the rest of my life and to spread your word. And secondly, to forgive the Japanese for starting the war out in the Far East and for ultimately shooting him down and killing his colleagues. And he was also pledged to teach people to be more forgiving in future. Okay, next please. And in his book, Zamperini, this is an exact quote from his book, he actually, to this day, bearing in mind he made this deal with God many years ago now, this is exactly how he remembers it. This is an extract. He said, I waited, and true to his promise, he came into my heart and my life. I felt no tremendous sensation, just a calm that let me know that God was with me. So he remembers that to this day when God came into his life and gave him the strength and the power to get him through what I'm sure you're going to agree any minute now is even more awful situations than he'd actually been through already. Okay, next please. Right. One of his colleagues had severed his arm and he was in the life raft with him, spurting blood out. He put a tourniquet on it, but obviously the whole life raft was absolutely drenched in blood. You're in the Pacific Ocean, as Michael the surfer will testify, the Pacific tends to have quite a lot of sharks, some of the great white variety. He said he'd never seen anything like it. The sharks were coming up onto the life raft, and the only way they could get them off is with a paddle that was part of the rider's life raft, of whacking them on the head, trying to fend them off. And he said that one of the most terrifying things he can remember is the raft was made out of like plastic. It was like a kid's paddling pool, I guess. And he said he was sitting there and he could see the shark fins under the pool, and it's like making it's like a V shape as the fin was pushing up under the bottom of the pool. And he said this happened for countless hours. And he said that, cut a long story short, this went on for ages and ages and ages. And after a while, when most of the sharks had subsided, they found out well, the next big challenge was we haven't got any water, we haven't got any food. And there was no point drinking the seawater because it's too salty. They tried fishing, they're part of their survival pack was a small fishing rod. They weren't catching anything with the fishing line. So Zamperini, because he was like an officer, he'd been through quite advanced survival skills, which was like an old-fashioned Bear Grylls. And he knew that if you can catch a shark, it's obviously a small one, that the livers in the sharks are eatable, they're edible. Everything else, well, you can't eat at all. But the only thing you can eat with a shark is his liver. So what they managed to do, with the help of the bait, when they saw smaller sharks, 2 foot and under, like baby ones, they'd waggle their bait in the water, and as the shark comes up, the 3 of them would lump the little shark up onto the side, club it with a paddle, and then Zamperini was the man who'd rip it open, find the liver, and then eat it. But it was a bit of it's like a poison chalice, really, because imagine if you rip a shark open, there'll be a lot of blood. A lot of blood equals more sharks. So they managed to get away, surviving for a while on little tingly fish, which they weird much caught, but the livers of sharks. But again, every day they were surrounded by sharks because of the amount of blood. Okay, next please. Right. They'd been adrift for ages, a couple of weeks. And all of a sudden they had a buzzing noise in the air, great, the motors of an aircraft. And they thought, Zamperini was brilliant at recognising planes. He goes, that's the engines of I think it was a US Super Fortress bomber. Great, let's get their attention. So they had their distress flare, fired it up, they were waving, help, and the plane changed course. Great, the plane had seen them, started circling them. And as the plane got a bit closer, they were looking for the stars and stripes on the wings to make it a United States plane. And suddenly, Zamperini's heart sank. His blood pressure went through the roof. He saw 2 big red circles on the wings. And that means it's a Japanese plane. It wasn't an American one. Japanese plane recognised they were Yanks and started dive bombing them, spraying them with bullets. And to escape them, they had to dive off the end of the raft and dive down as far as they could, because the bullets would, because I'm not a physicist, but the actual the water would stop the bullets and slow them down so much. After about 10 or 15 foot, they'd virtually be, you know, come to a standstill. So they had to go dive down, and then dive up again to get some air, down again, and this happened for about 20 minutes. They're going up and down, until the plane had to return to base because it ran out of fuel. By this point, their raft was in tatters, it had been riddled with bullets. But the three of them survived, simply by diving underwater. Okay, next please. Okay, this is where I can become a bit of a geography geek. I'm a geography graduate and I nearly went into teaching geography years ago. So this is my moment I could have had 30 years ago. Now, I'm going to keep it simple. We've got pub quiz people in here and I know we're a bit special when it comes to geography. I'm going to keep it at primary school, possibly middle school. The round thing there is sometimes called planet Earth. And I shall need to get out and show you this. Right. If I can point it here, this bit here on the curvature of the Earth, going around here, that's Japan, coast of Japan. Zamperini got shot down just off the coast there. Now, this is where he drifted to, there. It doesn't look a lot on the globe, but if you think there's Australia, and that's the Pacific Ocean, basically drifted what's near enough to the centre of the Pacific Ocean, the world's biggest ocean. Get down there. What's up? He drifted for 47 days on his raft, and that still remains in the Guinness Book of Records as a record for somebody in a life raft to survive out in the ocean. He travelled over 2,000 miles in the raft. They got on basically a current that was flowing through the Pacific, and they just moved. They didn't have to paddle or anything. They just got taken away with the current. They hoped they'd be washed ashore in Japan. Obviously they'd be captured, but instead they were going in a completely different direction, going right into the centre of the world's biggest ocean. Zamperini thought that they'd be washed up in there. He didn't realise at the time how much territory the Japanese had actually conquered. And he thought, oh, if we end up on one of these little islands, it's just going to be the local residents there, they'll give us a warm welcome. Oh, we'll just sit it out there until the end of the war, drinking coconuts and having a great time with the locals so they entertain us. Great stuff. They got washed ashore on the Marshall Islands, the islands with the red circles around it there, only to discover that the Marshall Islands had been captured by the Japanese about 3 months earlier. And the reason Japan wanted these islands was to set up its main interrogation base for captured British and American servicemen. So, you can imagine, when they were taken there, they got one hell of a time because they had the main interrogators of the Japanese military laying into them. Okay, next please. This is the exact prisoner of war camp he was kept in. He was initially kept on the Marshall Islands, and then when they realised who he was, they used him for propaganda purposes because he was an Olympic athlete and quite well known, even in Japan, because Japan were really into athletics at the time. He was taken from the Marshall Islands into Japan, and I'm not going to go through all of these. You've seen the films about how badly Japan treated Allied prisoners of war, but mock executions. They were on one bowl of rice a day. He did actually suffer from both cholera and malaria when he was in the camps. They put him. It was at the time that television was in its infancy, and in Japan, where the sort of groundbreakers taking it on, and there was actually rudimentary television in Japan, and they dragged him in front of the television cameras to say, similar to they did to the British airmen in the Iraq War, saying, I think America are rubbish, they should surrender now. They don't stand a chance against the Japanese, all propaganda, all at gunpoint. And he went down to about 5 stone in weight because of his treatment. Okay, next please. Okay, after the war, so everything ended. You've got Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the war ended, and then, as you would expect, this is a familiar story. with a lot of war veterans. Modern day, Iraq or Afghanistan. Zamperini obviously ended up in a big depression. He had loads of psychological problems and things that today we call post-traumatic stress disorder. His marriage ran into a lot of difficulty, resorted to his bad habits, drinking a lot. But nevertheless, even through all that, he remembered he'd already made a deal with God. And he started going back to church in his local neighbourhood. And after sort of a few months of going there, somebody very special ended up coming to his church. Next, please. It was Billy Graham. He was doing a tour of around the US. After this service, sort of Zamperini went up and said, "I want a little chat with you, please." And the two of them got on really well. And Billy Graham was absolutely amazed by the story Zamperini had to tell, and the fact that he made this deal with God. And the two of them then became good friends over the next few years. They did sort of lecture tours around the United States, where Zamperini would actually record his story of the war and relate it to Christianity and faith and trusting in God to get him through the difficult things like he'd done. So they ended up as being almost best friends. Okay, next please. And then in 1950, that's 5 years after the end of the war, he did something that likes of me and you would think is absolutely crazy. In mainland Japan, the Americans had set up a prison, basically a prison for all the Japanese sort of servicemen that they wanted to try on war crimes, for crimes against humanity. And a lot of the guards that guarded Zamperini were based in this prison called Sugamo Prison. And Zamperini said, "Right, I'll tell you what I want to do. I want to go out there and I want to forgive all the guards that beat me and treated me so badly." And he particularly wanted to find one guard who was really nice to him. There was one guard there who was, although he was Japanese, he'd actually been educated in Oxford University. And as a result, he became a Christian whilst he was in Oxford. And when he was guarding Zamperini, he was really nice to him. He was giving him extra rations. He was just generally looking after him. And he always vowed to do his best to try and meet him, but to forgive the others who were so horrible to him in a prison. Unfortunately, the trip wasn't that well organised. He went out to Japan with 2 suitcases full up of Bibles, and his intention was to give a Bible to each of the sort of Japanese military who were on trial there, some of them to be executed for the various crimes they've done. He turned up to the gates, and the Americans guarding the gate said, "What the hell are you doing? Because I just want to go in, and I want to forgive my captors." And they said, No. You're going to go. We know what you're up to. You're going to go in there. Those suitcases probably full up with a couple of guns and knives. You're going to get your own back, aren't you? You've got scores to settle. We do appreciate your viewpoints, but we can't let that happen. We've got the Geneva Convention. We're not allowing that to happen. We're not going to sink as low as the Japanese. And he said, "No, I promise you, I am going to forgive. I want to give up each of my guards at home and say to them, I forgive you what you did, even though it was awful, and here's a Bible." And the guards at the end said, "Well, we're still not convinced, but we have somebody on the end of the phone here. You need to convince this guy that you're going in that prison." And the guy at the end of the phone was a guy called General MacArthur. Now, I don't know if anybody's actually heard of him, but he was one of the main US generals in the Far East. He was the main man America had in the Far East war. And he fair dues to Zamperini, he managed to persuade MacArthur that, okay, providing he was searched for any weaponry, he could go in there and meet anybody who wanted to off the list, because he was going for the list of who was being detained there. And he picked out the people he knew, and he did exactly what he said he'd do. He met them, he gave them the Bible, he gave them a hug and said, "Look, I do forgive you. It was, what you did was wrong, but I do actually forgive you. And he actually managed to get the guy who was so good to him, the Japanese guy who was educated in Oxford, he actually managed to get him released. He said, listen, the guy was actually in there for a life sentence for being a guard at the prison. He got him off. He said, no, he's a good guy. He was just in there because he had no choice. So he managed to get him free. Okay, next please. Okay, Zamperini today, he's a very colourful character, and he still is. He's aged 96 now, and apparently they did a documentary on him in America, and he said that if you want to find Zamperini in his sheltered housing complex, just look for all the pensioners surrounding him on the computer. Because apparently he's an absolute whiz at computing, and he teaches the younger pensioners, the guys in their 70s and 80s, teaches them how to use the internet and what have you. So he's still going strong, he still preaches. He set a school for disadvantaged children in a part of New York that he grew up in. And the Japanese, back in the 1990s, the city where he was detained actually hosted the Winter Olympic Games. And they said they had so much awe for Zamperini. They said, right, at the start of the games, when the Olympic flame comes into the arena, we're not going to have somebody Japanese bring in the flame. Zamperini, you bring in the flame. So there's Zamperini, about, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, with the Olympic flame that he brought into the arena in the Japanese Olympics. And at the moment, there's actually a Hollywood movie about his life being put together at the moment. Whether it'll be a success or not, I don't know. But it's in its infancy at the moment. But just watch his space. It might be probably quite an interesting film, provided they don't play around with it too much. Yes. That's it. Okay. You missed my last slide. My last slide basically was that's the story. But how can we relate it to you? I wanted everybody to go away today and learn to be a little bit a better person through Zamperini's story and what he managed to achieve. Even if it's something small, like forgiving an ex-partner you didn't get on with, or a boss that did something horrible to you, or even life stuff. If you've got a very difficult situation like that, bereavement or difficulties in your relationship, that to turn to God and to trust Him to pull you through your difficult times. And I'll tell you what I took away from it, is that when I was in high school, in my first year of high school, my father died when I was in my first year. And as a result, because I was a bit different, I got bullied, especially by this one guy called Lee Davidson. And I'm quite a revengeful person. And that's probably those who sort of mumbo jumbo with star signs. It says Scorpio, vengeful, and that sort of method sort of testify, that probably sums me up. I'd never forget. And I've always thought, in the back of my mind, if I come across this guy, when I go back to Cardiff to visit my mum, I was brought up when I went to school, I could see him, and he had quite a distinctive scar. It was a bit like a Mikhail Gorbachev scar on the side of his face. So I could probably still recognise him even 30 years down the line. When I saw him and then down the street and there's not many people around, I'd go over and land him and say, do you remember me? It's 30 years ago, but it's just a little reminder that I don't forget. And after I read the Zamperini story, I thought, come on. It's 30 years gone, the guy was 11 years old, he probably didn't know what he was doing, he probably had his own issues, and like most bullies, they do bully because they've got problems themselves. And I thought, I'll tell you what, I'm going to leave that one. What's the point, 40-something years old? Leave it alone, learn from Zamperini. If he could forgive Japanese guards for flogging him and what have you, I'm sure I could forgive an 11-year-old boy for calling me a load of names when I was 12 years old. So that's what I took away from it. And hopefully, you can sort of relate. Next time we're having problems, hopefully nowhere on the scale of Zamperini had. Perhaps you can just think of the Zamperini story and what can I take from that. Thank you very much. I know Mike's going to elaborate on this somewhat.
Jason, you like that? Pete, you got here.
Come on, Pete.
Tom.
Show us what you're made of.
I'll do one at a time.
One at a time and count them. How many?
Okay, one at a
30
time.
seconds
One
or
at a time.
something?
One at a time. Okay, one at a time.
Is it how many within a time limit?
No, it's limited. You can't do that.
No, press ups.
Are we timing it?
Let's go. Press up till you fail.
How many press ups in 1 minute?
No, press up till you fail.
Ready?
1 minute.
On your marks. Let's do 30 seconds.
It's 30 seconds. Okay.
On your marks. Get set.
Yeah. Okay, Hammer, you need to cheer Jason on, okay? You ready? 3, 2, 1, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38,
Stop! That's the man I married. Yeah, come on.
39 for Jason. I don't think we counted that one. Can you do it again, please? Have a seat, Jason. Go on, please.
Come on then, Pete.
This is kind of like Cardiff in Newport, isn't it?
Come on, Dragon.
Yeah, that was the glasses. Good.
Right.
Are we ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Are we
On
ready?
your marks. Get set. Go.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. Well done, Chris.
We do have a medic in the house. Mike is a trained nurse if we run into a house.
Carl, we're going to give Carl an advantage. He's going to start on 39. Yeah, we're doing 39. I should have to. So you just,
Oh, never mock it 50.
okay, so you start on 70. Yeah. One to win, Carl. That's all we need. One to win. Two to win. Okay. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, just lie there for the rest of the Smithers card, it's fine. We're just saying crazy or something. Carl wins then. I think Carl wins at 45, I think. That's it.
Jen, you might need to give him the kiss of life.
Let me have a
So, not that kind of place? No.
Here are people in the chocolate.
Send the
Off your phone, Ali, got some chocolate here, quick.
Oh, yeah.
Look, she's so excited. Look at the smile on her face.
It says it all, doesn't it?
Cool.
Young people these days.
Give them an applause, guys.